walking in unity, endeavoring to keep the unity of Christ by humility and by forbearance, we learn. We do that by understanding the gifts that God gives the church, and that we deploy our own gift, and that we understand the goal is to become more like Christ, and we pursue that together. Well, then we got into a portion of Ephesians chapter 4 where we are reminded in verse 17 that to walk worthy of the vocation means that we are to put off something and put on something new. We're to put off the old man, we're to replace it with the new, and the new man is what we've learned of Christ, correct? It is becoming more like Christ. And so we have learned in the last several verses in Ephesians that there's something to replace, there's something to renew our minds in the Word, and there's something to reveal, there's something to reflect, and that is Jesus Christ. That's the new man that we are trying to put on daily. The battle continues. We still war with the flesh, we have learned. And yet our goal as believers now is to take off the old, renew our minds in the Word of God, and put on the new man, which is after the likeness of Christ, what we have learned from Christ. Well, that brought us into some very stark realities for the Christian walk. The first one being that if we were to put on the new man, that means we're going to put on a new tongue. We're going to put on a new way of speaking. We're going to forsake lying and inaccuracies in our words, and we're going to prioritize truth, accurate words. We looked at that in verse 25 a few weeks ago. You can review that online if you would like. There are some things that we need to understand with truth and lies about putting off one and putting on another. And that brings us to verses 26 and 27 that we're going to look at today, and we're in a list of things that a believer should do and should not do, and it's in this section of a believer's behaviors. What does the new man look like? What are we to put off as it pertains to anger, we're going to see this morning. Have you ever waited too long to do something? I know I'm not the only one. Maybe I am the only one. You've waited too long, and as a result, by the time you remembered to do it or by the time you chose to do it, it was too late. You could no longer perhaps do it, or the opportunity has passed you by. One thing that I was just kind of reminiscing about this past week as I was studying for this is the fact that when my wife and I talk about opportunities for our family, maybe it's an outing, maybe it's an event, maybe it's a financial opportunity, whatever it might be, we struggle, and maybe you do as well, with actually pulling the trigger and making the decision. We talk about it, we do our list of pros and cons, and then it'll come up again, and we'll say, all right, we've made the decision, let's do it, and then we'll look and, well, the opportunity's passed us by, it's too late, we should have made a decision prior. I remember in college, homework was a lot different than high school. It was a culture shock to me. In high school, homework was usually due the next day and all these things. But in college, you had different classes on different days. And so you would have an off day. And so your homework would really be due 2 days from the last class that you had. And so at Maranatha Baptist University, we had a time system. And I believe it was at 11:59 every night was the goal. You had to have it turned in to your professor online at like 11:59, maybe it was 11:55 even, before midnight was the goal, and that was on time. And so what would usually happen, at least in the guys' dorms, is we would go to class, we would then probably nap, we would socialize, we would do our sports or whatever it might be, and we would get back to dorm lock, which was 10, because you feel like prisoners with dorm lock, and so you don't want to go in there early. So you go into dorm lock at 10, make sure you're in your dorm, and then you had some time to kill, and then 11 o'clock hits, and you realize I've got 59 minutes now to get in my work. Well, if it just struck midnight, or it just struck 11:56, if it was due at 11:55, then it was too late. It was past due. And then you would go, and you would humbly go to your professor and say, look, I know it was due at 11:59. If you check the time, it was turned in at 12.